Okay, so I'm Phil Robinson, Creative Director at Procter & Stevenson, and we're a B2B marketing agency based in Bristol. We're specialising in working with businesses like yours in the manufacturing, electronics, tech and engineering sectors. And before I start, I want to reassure you, you've seen the topic of the talk today. I'm not here to talk about what was once described to me as excuse my French, the bullshit and rainbows of brand marketing. That was described to me by the managing director of a very well-known manufacturing company. That's certainly not what we're about at Procter & Stevenson. It's not what I'm about to talk to you today. Instead, what I intend to do during this session is to make the case for brand and branding as a critical differentiator for your business, and what should be a fundamental pillar of not only your marketing operations, but also your business strategy, your commercial strategy, and your customer service strategy. The one fundamental truth I hope to prove is this: brand has a direct impact on your bottom line. It really does, as you'll see over the coming 40 minutes or so, drive commercial performance, establishes competitive difference, and critically differentiates your business in what is undeniably an overcrowded manufacturing and electronics landscape. So to start things off, let's talk about the struggle for differentiation. And having worked in the industry for 20 years myself, I know that isn't easy. So where do you start? Well, you could, of course, look to differentiate your business or your products in terms of price. But that's invariably a short-term strategy. It leads to a race to the bottom and lower perceptions of quality out there in the market. You could also aim to differentiate your business on product features or specification. That can be effective if you're genuinely unique in the market and you're able to stay so. But you're also wide open then to innovation, new products coming into the market. And again, it's not necessarily a long-term strategy. And that's really where brand comes in. Because if you get your brand and your brand marketing right, you can achieve genuine, meaningful, commercially beneficial differentiation. Please, Greg. So before I go into the main heart of it, I want to just get some context established here. We can start with a common agreement of what a brand is and isn't. And that's one of the most difficult concepts to get agreement on. I'm sure if I asked you guys here in the room, we'd get a whole host of different definitions of what a brand, and almost all of them would have a degree of truth in there. For some people, brand is just your logo, or your colour palette, or maybe a strap line. And all those elements have a part to play in establishing and promoting your brand, but they're far from the full story. Far from the real rationale that explains how and why a brand is such an important factor in your differentiation strategies. So to describe how we approach brand at Procter & Stevenson, I like to use the analogy of a flag. So when you look at the Union Jack here, it immediately invokes sentiments and perceptions, assumptions. It represents something. But it isn't the flag itself that gives meaning or a distinct identity or a differentiation to the nation it represents. The identity of the nation is actually based on its history, its culture, its geography, its people, its art, its sport, its heritage, the welcome it offers to people who visit the country. And crucially, that identity, those sentiments that the flag evokes, is also created by the people who are looking in on the nation, not necessarily the people from the nation. It's about people who are reading about that nation in the news, those who encounter products or services produced there, and things it brings to the world. So what we like to describe is the flag is your visual brand, the obvious manifestation of it, so your logos, your colours, all of that. But your brand itself is an accumulation of many different things. The things you stand for as a business, the way you communicate externally and internally, the way you deliver your products and services, your products, your processes themselves, the customer experience, how you're referred to by others, and the economic conditions in which you work. They all go together to create your own distinctive brand. So we move from this basic description of a brand, so a brand is the non-generic name for a business, product or service, something specific, to something a bit more meaningful for us. A brand is a business or product that has a distinct identity, and finally reaching something that we really believe in at Procter & Stevenson, and many of our clients have benefited from. Brand is the meaning given to a business, product or service by those who create it and those who experience it. It's what people feel about you. And that's where it gets really interesting, because we could break that statement down into three important sections. First of all, brand is the meaning. So brand is what you, your business, your product, your services mean to people. What all those elements I mentioned earlier in combination mean to existing customers, prospective customers, to your partners, your competition, the wider market. And then there's this second element here, those who create it and those who experience it. And that's really important in understanding the effectiveness and differentiating capabilities of a brand, because brand is a two-way street. So we could all do everything in our power to create the most perfect brand for your business, and that's really important. But at least 50% of the equation is actually in the hands of the world outside of your business. And that's where the meaning is created for your brand. So whatever brand promises you make, whatever statements or positioning you take, you must be able to deliver on them in every communication, every touch point, every interaction, to give yourself at least a fighting chance of differentiating your business. And then there's a final critical point. Brand is what people feel about you. Now, before I move into how and why that's true and why it really matters, I'll give you a really well-known example of a brand, not necessarily in manufacturing, but a really well-known brand that's a really good example of affecting how people feel about them. And it's arguably the world's most famous brand, Apple. So Apple was founded in 1976 by Steve Wozniak and Steve Jobs, they well know that, two self-confessed computer geeks. And in those early days, it gained this cult following as a tech company. So the followers of the company, the people who really enjoyed working with the company were tech enthusiasts themselves. And it focused heavily on innovative technology, so the specs of the product, the feeds and speeds of the computing. And its brand advertising supported that. This is how it used to talk to the world. But in the mid-1980s, it began to adopt a brand positioning that differentiated itself from the rest of what was an exploding PC and computer market. So it described itself that unlike typical PCs, its technology was user-friendly, described in the slogan, "The computer for the rest of us." But even with this more edgy brand positioning, it still continued to be a tech company first and foremost, and it began to struggle in the face of competition. So much so that by 1997, Apple was on the verge of bankruptcy. And so it turned again to Steve Jobs, who had left the business, asked him to come in back to the business, and he came with a new vision. And it was this idea, think different. Because he saw, with his visionary mindset, he saw that people weren't just interested in the technology that Apple produced. They were moved by the idea of great-looking technology that fitted with their lifestyles in a different way. He saw that people needed to feel something about their technology choices. And so Apple took things in a new direction. In 2001 saw the arrival of the iPod, and with it a new brand that focused on celebrating the lifestyles of Apple tech users. And that was just the start, really, for Apple. The Apple brand now, as we all know, has become something remarkable. It's a brand that represents a genuine, emotive connection between technology and the user. So it's not a phone choice anymore, it's a lifestyle choice. And all of the sentiments that Apple now evokes in customers, in fans, it doesn't really have to work very hard to generate desire for its technology nowadays. So it just puts them out there. People fall in love with it immediately. Brand loyalists don't compare the tech specs of Samsung against Apple. They choose the iPhone because it's Apple and everything that represents in their minds. In fact, Apple now have made the ultimate branding trick of creating lifestyle stores. So you need to book appointments to go into their shops. And they evoke all that same association as the technology does. The physical and the emotional are absolutely entwined. So by recognizing that people need to feel something to evoke emotion, it's gone from the brink of bankruptcy to the position of global domination it enjoys today. And obviously we don't have access to Apple's finances, to its marketing budget, to all of those things, and it is a lifestyle brand, but the principles hold true, and I'm going to show you why now. In many instances when I talk about this, and particularly in sort of hard-nosed industrial manufacturing electronics industries, when I suggest that what people feel about your business and services is of the utmost importance, I'm met with an assertion that this simply isn't the case, because commercial decisions are based solely on rationale and logic, right? That's what people believe. But actually, we have found, and evidence shows, that the opposite is true, and here's why. Now, I'm going to go into a little bit of neuroscience here, and I'm not an expert at this stuff, so if anyone is, I really do apologize, but here goes anyway. So as human beings, our thinking systems are divided into these two systems. We've got system one, which is our brain's fast, automatic, unconscious and emotional response to the world around us. So that's things like knowing instinctively how to tie your shoelaces, or knowing to jump over a puddle, or even how we react immediately to an ad or a website. And then there's system two, which is more thoughtful, more considered, more rational, and that's where those decisions are made. And here's the thing, because system two thinking is harder, people spend less time making decisions from that place of reason. Instead, we spend much of our time making decisions from system one, and then unconsciously we use system two to back up the decision, to justify a system one decision. And that's how brands work. Because brands are about how people feel about you, and that's system one thinking, they actually represent the prime motivator in our decision making, even in very commercial arenas. So that feeling, I'm not talking about some high-flown emotion. The emotion might be security, or reassurance, or aversion to risk, or safety, or many other things like that. And it's only once that system one decision is made that people use system two thinking, such as a closer analysis of your services, your pricing, the experience for a customer, your product spec, and so on, to justify or ratify the decision they've already made in their minds. So this is the bottom line. Decision makers in almost every industry make quick, intuitive decisions, but then use rational facts to back up those decisions. And here's the second part of the argument for brand being absolutely fundamental to the commercial success and differentiation of a business. Strong, consistent brands de-risk decision making. So why does that matter so much? Well, quite simply, the overriding factor in any commercial decision is the avoidance of risk. It's far more powerful than the promise of reward. So if your brand is familiar, if it evokes those feelings of security and safety and all of that, you're much likely to be a preferential choice in the minds of prospective customers. It's precisely that thought that led to one of the most famous brand campaigns of all time. Nobody ever got fired for buying IBM, sorry. And I'm sure you'll recognize this yourself. Often you'll hear of people making a commercial decision, a buying decision, on behalf of their business, based largely on the reassurance or kudos that comes from the association with a well-known supplier or brand, someone who's really well established. And it's not surprising, really, because if you think about it, if that buyer goes and chooses a less well-known firm, takes a bit of a flyer on someone, and things don't go well, they're going to be asked, why did you choose that firm? Why did you choose them? However, if they've chosen a big, well-known firm and it goes wrong, they're likely to be asked by their board, what did that partner get wrong? So the choice of that person, of that company, has de-risked the decision, so they're avoiding blame. And the risk of being blamed or in the firing line is often too great to accept. But there is another really important argument for investment in your brand as a differentiator, and it's this. Your brand is what people say about you when you're not in the room. So why does that matter? Well, it's really important this, because you can't influence every decision, every conversation that goes on when people are making purchasing decisions about you. And really importantly, when it comes to marketing, only at best 5% of your potential audience is in market to buy at any one time. So that means that 95% is not interested in what you've got to say when you go out to market at that moment in time. However, consistent investment in brand marketing means you'll be the first name that comes to mind when that 95% is in market. And we talk about always-on brand marketing there. And the distinction is this. This is how we like to refer to it in Procter & Stevenson. The dark spikes are what you get if you take out if you run what we call sales activation or direct promotion activity. You get these moments in time where you might run a price promotion, for example, or a discount, or some other incentivized marketing. You get these spikes in activity that fall away very, very quickly because you're only ever targeting 5% of your market at a time. However, if you invest in true brand marketing where you focus on the needs and the concerns, the feelings of your entire market, and you reflect those trends and needs through your own brand marketing, you get this cumulative effect over time, over probably 12 to 18 months, this uplift in sales in the long term, as opposed to the short-term effects of direct sales activation. Now, we're not suggesting for a second that there's no place in direct promotion, sales activation, what you might want to call it. It really is important, but it has to have the cover of your brand marketing, actually building the long-term strategy around it. So that's just our commercial argument for brand as a differentiator. But the next question is, how do you go about accessing the full potential of your brand? There's a process that we like to follow. And it's this. We want to help our clients progress through this triangle. You start at the bottom, unaware of your brand. People don't know you in your market. Often that's where we start with our clients. We often work with startups or new businesses to the market, new entrants. Brand recognition means that your brand is recognized, and it's usually through prompted recall. So they remember it if you nudge them in the right direction. Brand recall means that people know of you and can remember you when they're thinking about a particular category. Top of mind, the place that you really, really want to be, means that you immediately come to mind when people are thinking of the category in which you operate, in which you sell products and services. So you almost represent the category. And that's the nirvana of brand laughter, where we try to get people. You are actually the first name that comes to anyone's mind when they're thinking about your category. So how do we move through those levels? Well, there are certain things, considerations, strategies that you want to put in place. First of all, a robust brand strategy increases your chances of success. And that's back to that system 1, system 2 thinking. It enables intuitive decisions, but are then based on facts. So you need to back up your brand marketing with facts about your products and services. Second, your brand must be memorably distinctive and reinforced consistently over time. If you want to reach those upper echelons of that triangle I just showed you, strong recall and from top of mind awareness, you need to be consistent in the way you appear, in what you talk about, the way you present yourself, and the emotions that you evoke in your customers. And reinforcing that consistently over time is really important. But equally, as I said before, logo, colorway, all of those things, photography, video, whatever you want to do, memorably distinctive is really important. Of course, you want to stand out. And the final one, and really important one, if you have a strong brand strategy, it should move your story from what you do to why it matters for your clients or your customers. You really want to get to a place where your brand is actually reflecting your value proposition framed in what your customers are looking for. And that's really critical. And the way we do that with our clients is the following. This is the foundations of that, moving your story towards why it matters to your clients. 3 elements. There's you, so your business. There's your clients, your customers, and the sector or sectors in which you operate. And by identifying the overlap between each, we can arrive at a really meaningful, differentiated brand proposition. So we look at you and your sector, and comparing those two, and overlaying those two, we can identify exactly how you're different from the rest of the market. Looking at your sector in the context of your customers, your clients, we can identify trends in the market, needs in the market, things that are changing. And then looking at you and your clients, you can see where you provide unique value to them, what you do that actually delivers most value. When you combine all of those things, you get a really strong central brand from which you can build out all of your brand marketing, and on the back of that, your sales promotion marketing. From there, you'll often hear a brand agency creating what's known as a brand house. Now, it looks like this. It can be really helpful, lots of elements to it, but we like to be really, really focused on commercial outcomes for you guys. So in this case, what I really want to focus on is the thing that sits at the top, because that's the most important in terms of differentiating your business, and that's your brand essence. You'll hear it called purpose, essence, mission, various different things, but brand essence is what we're calling it here. So what is it? So the essence is really a distillation, a very short statement of what exactly you stand for. It captures the DNA of your brand. It's not an external advertising line, but it's something that unites everyone in your business, something that you can all believe in and get behind and promote. It really focuses attention on your core ambitions as a business, and it actually provides something inspiring for your internal teams to work towards. And it could be a measure of how successful you're being in that. And so what does it need to be all of those things? It needs to be absolutely relevant to customer needs and desires. As I said, we're not talking about airy-fairy brand concepts here. We're talking about things that are absolutely grounded in your business, in what your customer wants and needs. It needs to be durable, stay relevant over time, because when we looked at that Venn diagram earlier, when we're talking about your sector and your customers, there are external pressures working on them. So things necessarily change in the way you talk and what you talk about, but the actual DNA of your brand needs to stay consistent over time if you're to build that top of mind awareness that I showed in terms of the longevity of sales. It also needs to be memorable, crisp and emotive, something that people really understand and remember, unique and distinctive, something differentiated. It needs to be single-minded, authentic and believable. So one of the companies that we've worked with, in terms of identifying a brand essence and applying it to their marketing is Prysmian. Prysmian is the world's largest manufacturer of cables, work all around the world. They're based in Italy where we work with them, but they're also based down in Southampton over here as well. It's a really great company. It's got a really long and successful history. And historically, it communicated with the world in terms of its product specification and technical detail. And that's really important still. I am absolutely not suggesting that you guys do not need this level of information when you're talking to customers. But it's not the opening gambit. It's not that always-on presence that's really going to resonate with customers all of the time. And particularly with Prysmian, as the market changed, it faced new pressures from other manufacturers, like lookalike manufacturers, often competing on price. And so it needed to re-establish something more meaningful, a more meaningful connection with its customers around the world. So it arrived that we helped them arrive at this emotive, differentiating brand essence of, as you see in the top two there, linking the future. By talking about linking the future, because Prysmian was what they call an enabler of the transition towards digital communications, towards fibre to the home, towards the proliferation of 5G and that sort of thing, and oil and gas and renewable energies. It really allowed us to tell some of these remarkable stories about what is achieved with Prysmian's technology, with Prysmian cabling. And at the heart of it is cables. It's not that exciting. But some of the outcomes, some of the things its customers do are really exciting. And we can really get some meaning in there and really get some emotive connections with customers by talking about what Prysmian does that is remarkable, how it's valuable to its customers, and what it does to really elevate itself and differentiate itself above the competition. So in terms of a really practical level, there are a number of principles and approaches that will help you move up this triangle, this pyramid, if you like, towards top of mind brand recall. And the first is consistency and coverage. So in terms of your messaging, in terms of your visual communications, you really want to be consistent. A diluted brand really doesn't help in the way it looks. You know, it proliferated around the company, people changing elements of it, it starts to get diluted. But also in the messaging, you will have to necessarily talk about lots of different things as a business, but the heart of it, that essence must remain the same. It must come from the same place. The next one is a really good long-term, robust strategy. And this is a description or diagram of the types of brand strategy we help put in place for clients. What you see is we tend to, if this is a 12-month strategy, we try to look at things quarterly. And we might have a theme per quarter, we might have multiple themes per quarter, but just for the ease of understanding here, I've kept it to one theme. Each theme will be reflective of your brand, but really grounded in what your customers are interested in, what keeps them awake at night, how you're serving them, how you're differentiated. By choosing a theme, what we can do is produce maybe one hero piece of content for that quarter, and then many, many different pieces of content out of that top line, that umbrella content. So you might have a main article or an ebook or a digital PDF that you can share with the world where you tell everyone about, it might be why sustainability is particularly important in your market, or new state safety regulations, or whatever that might be. And then we're able to then generate lots of social posts from that hero content. We're able to create editorial things that might be shared across social media, but also in industry magazines, publications. There'll be ongoing posts and attendance at events where you can still talk about that same thing. And then you may have emails, for example, to an opted-in database of existing customers or subscribers. And then also things like PPC and the optimization of your website. So by keeping things tied together around a brand theme, you can maintain that consistency, consistency with your brand essence, but also generate lots of different types of content, lots of content variety. That means you're an interesting company to interact with. And the final point in moving up that chain I'd like to talk about is complete clarity. And this is about your internal team. Because, as I said, brand is a two-way street. Brand is 50% internal and 50% external. So is everyone in your business familiar and comfortable with the brand? Are they able to talk about it in the way that you hope they can? Are they applying it effectively and correctly? Is it consistent? Does it look great? Is it creating the right impression in the minds of customers? And what can you do to promote better understanding and clarity? Do you have the systems in place? Are you sharing the right communications with people? Is there information available in the right places? So those are all really important as how you can move up that food chain of branding, if you like, from unaware of your brand right to top of mind, instant brand recall. And so next I'd like to just give you a quick example of a brand we've worked with that has differentiated itself through a clear brand essence and positioning strategy. There's these guys, Core Energy. Now Core Energy are a renewable energy company. There are lots of renewable energy companies out there, but Core actually has a remarkable story to tell. Core is different in that what they have done is created a technology that allows us to harvest renewable energy and then store it for long periods of time, so way beyond the capability of a battery. What they do is while the sun is shining, the wind's blowing, they generate the energy and then they compress it in air into caverns under the ground. When the sun stops shining, when the wind stops blowing, they release that compressed air again and start the generators again. So it's quite prehistoric technology really, but it's really effective. And it's a really remarkable story. So we got talking to Core and really tried to get under the skin of what they meant to the world, what value they offered. We spoke to their internal teams, their external partners, people like the EU, people like governments, but also people like lobbyists about green energy and all of that. And we arrived at a really strong positioning. And it was based around, I won't read the whole thing out, but it was based around the brand essence of real power. Because what Core Energy offers is real power to its customers, to its partners, real power in terms of energy providers, utilities, so real meaningful power. Real power in terms of governments and the EU and people like that, because they can now much better control the flow of energy. They're not held to ransom by oil companies, for example, or unfriendly governments. But also real power for the critical investor audience, people who want to invest in renewable energy, because it allows them finally to invest in something that represents sustainability, but also fantastic returns. So we really run this real power brand essence, and it allowed us to talk to the internal team. So we're powering a clean energy future, and again, that's real power. Energy that transforms intermittent supply into constant availability, that's real power. Now, we're using real power actually in the advertising, in the commercial communications. As I said, the essence doesn't have to appear that explicitly, but in this case, it worked really well for us. Again, we can look at all the different audiences, all the different messages within the context of real power here. So energy that defeats tyranny, again, talking about those guys who are holding energy to ransom. Energy that takes away the compromise between heating and eating. We're talking there to societies, to governments, and ROI to the investment audience. Again, represented in this message. So an energy company loved by Greta and Goldman, that's real power. So you can see how they've really taken on board their brand essence and allowed it to become something that runs throughout all their communications and is really effective in creating that feeling, that meaning between customer and brand. So I've talked about brand being about feeling and meaning and emotion, or that system one thinking of it I mentioned earlier. So you'd be forgiven for thinking that this is difficult to quantify, it's difficult to measure. How will I know if I invest in this stuff, how will I know if I'm getting anything back? But it is entirely possible to manage brand impact. So there's a really easy, cheap way of doing this. You can look at brand search, share of brand search. That's an online measure. So it's not only a reliable indicator of brand awareness, but it can also be a leading indicator of market share. So it measures the relative percentage of online searches for your brand against all other brands in your category. So that data is free. You can get that from things like Google Trends. You can do that yourself straight away. Secondly, a bit more deeper, you can commission research. People like Nielsen will run research into how your brand is performing, how aware your customers, your market is of your brand. They can measure brand recall, brand preference, what people feel about your brand sentiment, and brand momentum, which means, is your awareness actually increasing? You can also do it by looking at loyalty and advocacy. Is that going up? You can benchmark your repeat purchases, your cross-sell and upsell rates, and measure them quarterly, for example. Also, net promoter scores can be really important to measure customer satisfaction. And you can measure and benchmark brand sentiment across social channels. There are a lot of tools out there that allow you to do that. And all of these things allow you to really see whether you're achieving good ROI on your investment in brand marketing. So a bit of a whistle-stop tour there. Hopefully it's meant something in terms of brand and differentiation and the distinction we need to make between the brand identity and actually what brand does to drive commercial success. So this is what we've gone through. So brand has a direct impact on your bottom line. We've got the evidence to prove that. And it's what people feel about you. And that drives their decision making. And that's really important, obviously, in commercial decisions. Strong brands de-risk purchase decisions. People are much more averse to risk than they are in terms of moving towards reward. Investment in your brand delivers long-term results, delivers long-term differentiation above and beyond what usual sales promotion can do. You need to define your brand to essence and make it famous if you want to get that consistency, that long-term growth. And a robust content strategy can help you do that, generating lots of different types of content over a long period of time. And it is entirely possible to measure brand effectiveness and ROI. It's not an ephemeral, intangible thing. Ultimately, all of that put together, for us, the evidence we've seen with our clients means that brand is your most effective route to long-term differentiation. Thank you.